desde Las Vegas, Nevada. Iniciamos con el programa Hablando de Bienes y Raíces con JC Castillo y sus invitados. Comenzamos.
Muy buenos días, Las Vegas, ¿cómo están? Yo soy JC Castillo, estamos comenzando su programa de Hablando de Bienes Raíces con JC Castillo, sus invitados. Estamos aquí en el estudio de Lawyer's Title. Today is Thursday, March the 6th. Unbelievable how much time is flying by. And today we have two special guests here in studio, and we're going to go ahead and give him the introduction right now. We are going to introduce Nichole and Abby. Nichole, good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning.
Abby, how are you?
I'm great.
Great. So Nichole and Abby, would you guys do me a favor and give me your first name, last name, the company you work with, how long you've been in the industry, and how can somebody get a hold of you, please? Abby, please.
So my name's Abby Rimmer, and I work at Lawyer's Title. And what was the question?
How long you been in the industry?
I've been in the industry for going on 21 years.
Okay.
And you can get a hold of me by phone, email, text, however you want to reach me. You want me to tell you my...
Please.
Okay. My phone number is 702-680-6097. And my email is abby.rimmer@ltic.com.
Perfect. And now we go to Nichole.
Hi, I am Nichole Seaman. I've been in the business for about 17 years, and I work at Lawyer's Title as well. Mm-hmm. You can get a hold of me same way, anyway, email, text, phone call. Mm-hmm. My email is nicole.seaman@ltic.com.
Perfect. Now, so we know where you work at. You know how long you've been in the street. So can we start by saying what exactly do you guys do at Lawyer's Title, please? So we'll start with Nichole. Nichole?
I am an escrow officer here at Lawyer's Title in our Southwest branch, which is off of Buffalo and Sunset. And I run your file from open to close. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you get that contract, you send it over, and I start all of the work on the back end.
Perfect. And Abby, what do you do for Lawyer's Title?
I'm also an escrow officer, so do the same as Nichole. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm at the Southwest branch, but we're opening our Green Valley office April 1st. So
correct.
We'll be heading over there.
Awesome. So for the people that are out there listening to us, and especially for the real estate agents that, you know, sometimes they don't understand how important is to have a good business partner to be your escrow officer. How can you explain that relationship to those agents that are especially brand new agents that have never been in the industry and they're like, hey, I got my new contract and I don't know what to do next? How important is to have a good escrow officer with experience in their corner helping closing their file? Nichole?
So obviously communication and partnership is the biggest thing that's going to help your transaction. Mm-hmm. As an escrow and title company that works with you, we are an extension of you to your client. So you want somebody that's going to portray professionalism, give good communication, and make sure that you're looking good when you're out there bringing in more deals, and so that we can handle your client on this side and make sure that they feel comfortable.
Right. Abby, would you agree with that?
I totally agree. Communication is absolutely the most important. Is if you can make a connection with build a relationship and stay in communication. And that's, I mean, it goes both ways. Like, we want to be able to reach you, and you should be able to reach us too. So.
Okay. So we try to contact the agent, and when they're not answering, right? Because it happens. Let's be honest. 85% of the real estate agents, they don't answer their phone calls.
Right.
They don't, you know.
They have like a generic voicemail too, or it hasn't even been set up. Like, are you doing business?
Exactly. Right. And again, we don't want to bash any agents, but it is important for you guys to understand the communication, right? Because when you guys make a phone call, it's not to find out what the weather is like or, how many listings they have, it's because you have a scenario in your file. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what the actual process is. And what we'll do is we'll jump back and forth between you two. So I'm a real estate agent, and I got my offer accepted, right? I didn't counter, right? Because usually somebody directs the deal to, Lawyer's Title. So I wasn't able to counter the contract. So now I'm coming in as a brand new agent, never worked with Lawyer's Title before, and the contract goes to, let's say you guys work as a team, right? It goes to you guys. What is the number one thing that I should be expecting as a real estate agent on the B side from your guys, going forward once you guys receive the contract?
I'd say that, well, for me, you'd hear from me, I'd give you a call and find out any specific details about your transaction and how you like to work. Do you have a TC? What way do you prefer to communicate? So we can be on the same page from the get-go.
Okay, Nichole?
Same. That's probably the biggest thing is you want to make sure, do you check text messages or emails more? Do you like to be called? Do you want us to deal directly with your client, or do you want us to go through you? Maybe you don't want us contacting them. That's something obviously we need to find out so that you don't get upset if we do one or the other and you didn't want that.
Okay, so explain that to me, because a lot of the conversations that I have with the real estate agent, they're like, I don't want to be bothered. But then you have those agents like, no, I want to be the point of contact. So how important is to be very specific from the beginning of the transaction to get that concept with all parties? Because remember, we're not only dealing with the buyer side, we're dealing with the seller side, right? And both agents might have something that they want done differently. Like, I have agents that are like, here's the contract, don't bother me, just call me when my check is ready to go, right? And then you have agents that are like, I want to be a part of every single conversation out there. So how do you have that conversation with the agent to figure out what is the best practice for him? And then from there, how do you remember? Because from what I know is that you guys are not sitting in your desk waiting for, one escrow every other month. I mean, you guys have a total of between 30 to 35 transactions happening. So that's like, if we multiply that just by the two agents, that's 60 different people that you're talking to in any given month. And that's not including HOAs. I mean, all the other stuff that we'll get into, right? How do you make sure that you keep track of, who wants to do what or how they want to be contacted, Nichole?
So obviously that's super important to find out from the beginning because we do need information from both the buyer and the seller. Okay. And sometimes agents don't want to give out personal information or collect that from their client. We work differently. Obviously, we all do the same thing. Some people have paper files. Some people make notes on something that they can go back and look at. We also have a system that we work in that we make notes. So wherever you make your notes, you always want to check when you speak to somebody on that file, is this somebody that I need to contact the agent or that I need to contact the client? So you just need to look back at what you wrote down or what you notated in the system to see who you're calling.
Right. Abby, same thing?
Yeah, same thing. And pretty much like if there's something that's kind of crazy or something, like there's those few and far between, so like those ones will stand out. You will remember like, oh, and don't call them.
So you're telling me if you get screamed at the very first phone call you have with the agent, you'll remember that agent?
Oh yeah. If they tell us something that's like, right. We'll remember
and look, we're just trying to keep it real, right? We're just trying to make sure that people understand that everyday transactions that you guys do sometimes are very sweet agents that, are great. And then you have the one agent that I've been doing title and escrow for so many years. And this is how well, that's not how we do it anymore. The biggest issue that I see with our customers, which is the listing agents and the buyer's agents, not the actual clients, is the portal that we use to keep everything safe. And last time, like about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I had Steve Dover here, who is the president of Lawyers Title. He was telling us how important is for the agents to understand that portal is there for safety. It's not because we want to be a pain in the ass. Right. It's not because we want to be difficult, but it's safety for the consumer because we know there's a lot of issues with wire fraud, right? Thanks. When you guys have the conversation with the agent, how is that conversation goes? Because I know a lot of the agents get frustrated because like, Nichole's like, So tell me your experience, Nichole, with that, please.
It's 50-50. I have people that love the portal because they can just log in at any time instead of having to send that email or that text message and see if the prelim's done or if the EMD is in. They can just check it in there. And then you have people that, they don't want to go through the hassle of setting up a whole new registration with something, making a new username, making a new password, having to log in there. So, obviously, it's easier sometimes to just send an email. Hey, can you send me the EMD? We would never respond and say, well, it's in the portal.
Right.
We would always send it over, but it would be available either through us or through the portal. So it's just preference. I don't think
another tool to. Yeah.
I don't think that there's a wrong or right. I think that's just preference.
Right. And Abby, what do you think?
Same thing. Yeah. Like I'd say it'll every now and then. I don't really have people that have problems with the portal anymore, except like every now and then there'll be a fluky one-off thing that I had one last week that she couldn't get in and then she couldn't get past some screen, but then you get around it and you send it another way and
right. Yeah. So now let's talk about, because Nichole brought up a term that is not used every day, especially with the consumer out there, unless you're buying a house, which is the EMD, right? Can you guys give me your explanation of what EMD is and what's the purpose of it. So we'll start with Nichole and tell me what the definition of the EMD is, and then Abby, you could jump in and tell me what is the purpose of the EMD, please.
So the EMD is your earnest money deposit. When you fill out a contract, it'll state on there how much you need to send in to secure your contract.
And Abby?
And it's like your good faith that you are going to close your transaction. So it's you're putting this down to say, I want this house, and
Your collateral.
your collateral.
Okay, so it's kind of like when you go to a car, you got to give a deposit, right? And people don't understand that. And like Nichole said, that is stated in the contract. So to my buyer's agents, you guys are watching, how important to be very specific when that earnest deposit is going to be into escrow. Because sometimes, let's say 70% of the contracts are written over the weekend, right? Because that's when most of the time people have, most of the people have time to go look at homes, and then you're writing contracts over the weekend. How important is to be very specific on the time that the earnest deposit needs to be into escrow? Because legally, you guys can't really start your escrow process until that hits the bank, right?
Right.
Abby?
Well, and sometimes, so the contract, I typically will see it'll be deposited within like 2 days of acceptance, but sometimes it'll just say, it'll be marked like upon acceptance, and it's like, so now, we need it now.
Yeah.
So, so but not like we don't have a problem with that, but it's just.
Well, I mean,
for you as an agent, if you want to be clear on that, so you can give your buyer enough time that they need, or as a listing agent to be watching that. Are they going to deposit it in 2 days, or is it going to be a week, or is it going to be right now, or how is it coming over?
And then obviously it's our duty to follow the contract when we get it, to make sure if it does say 24 hours or 48 hours that we're getting those wiring instructions or those options of how they can get their EMD in to the buyer as well.
Right. So just to be very specific, you escrow ladies, I have a highly respect for you guys, because I would not be able to do what you guys do, because I will probably reach over the phone and try to strangle somebody, right? And that's just me. That's why I'm the rep. But you guys do not make decisions on contracts,
right?
You guys only follow it. So like Abby said, if it says escrow to be deposited, but there's not a time frame, then you guys can't assume it's going to be done in a week. You guys have to call and really find out what does that mean.
Or a lot of times even like it'll say the deposit will be wired, which typically nowadays we get wires. But then if someone's having trouble getting into the portal, or they just, do you have to send a wire? And so we always say, well, we can accept a check for earnest money, but your contract says it's going to be a wire. So if everyone's okay with a check, okay, but your contract says this form. So
Nichole, elaborate if you can, please, with that.
So again, obviously our company accepts cashier's checks, wires, or personal checks for earnest money.
Okay.
But we do have to wait for the check to clear. So if you have a quick closing, a cashier's check and a personal check is not the route you want to go, we will have to wait the 10 days for that check to clear.
Okay.
A wire is always going to be your safest route for it being good funds. So if they do bring in a check, we just make sure to notify the agents, and we make sure if they're getting a loan that they tell their lender what account they're writing that check from, because you also don't want that to come up later that they used an account that wasn't verified.
Right.
Oh, okay. So now we're getting into a little bit more of peeling the onion, right? Now we're starting to see that things could change very rapidly if we're not following through what the contract was all about. And one of the things that I think Abby and you, Nichole, have kind of confirmed with me is you got to check with the other party.
Right.
I mean, if I'm the buyer's agent and I decide I'm going to write in $5,000 earned deposit via wire, and then for some reason my buyer cannot wire the money out, I just cannot assume that it's okay to have them just drop off a check, because that might not be okay with the other side.
Exactly.
Can we explain and talk a little bit about how that communication needs to be handled correctly?
Well, there's an example is,
Please.
what if as a buyer I write a check and then I want to back out of the deal, and so I just stop paying my check?
Oh.
I mean, then that's the listing agent clearly says, well, you were to wire it because the wire's good funds. So there's a big problem, and now it's on us, because now it's canceled, or now we don't have earnest money, and the seller is on, it can open a big can of worms. So
Nichole?
something small.
Agree or disagree?
Agree, 100%. So you definitely don't want to be the person to tell the buyer that they can do something that was different than what the contract said. You want to make sure that all parties are aware.
Yeah.
So you got to stick to the contract.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. So my buyer's agents out there, you need to understand that when you write contracts, it is a legal binding.
So, or if you want to check, then say check, or to be deposited check or wire. Like if you really want to cover all your bases and your buyer can give a check, or then you should state it.
Okay. So again, we're teaching our buyers how to properly write a contract, right? Which is fine, because I know that with your years of experience, you guys seen great contracts written, which you and again, I don't look at contracts all day long. You guys do, because you guys receive them every single day. Can we go ahead and agree to say that from the moment that you receive a contract and you look it over and read it, you're like, oh, this transaction is going to be a great transaction just because of the way the contract's been written? Or
like the way like the initial email comes over, like how much are they giving me? What are they telling me? What are they giving me any meat in their email? Like, are they telling me, or are they just like, here, open and like,
because the contract's pretty standard. Yeah. Okay. I mean, most agents use the same contract, so it's pretty boilerplate, and they fill in the blank. So the contracts usually always come over pretty perfect, but that doesn't mean the transaction's going to go perfect.
Okay, and that's fair, because we're going to go into that scenario, right? Handling unperfect transactions. That is the biggest hurdle for you ladies, because that's where you guys spend most of the time trying to get information out, like pulling teeth, right? So in your years of experience, going back without any details, can you tell me, just off the top of your head, and I know you guys have plenty of stories, what has been your most difficult transaction out there, and what can the agent done differently to make it easy? Okay. Do you know what I mean? Nichole, you have one?
I would probably say judgments or liens.
Okay.
When we send over the preliminary title report, obviously, as an escrow officer, we want to point out if there's something unusual. We don't expect the agent to know exactly how to read the prelim. That's not their job, right? That's not what they're doing every day. That's what we're doing.
Correct.
But sometimes when we send that over, sometimes our emails are boilerplate, and if we're pointing something out, maybe they're just skimming through the email and they didn't pay attention to it. So the lack of communication there seems to cause a problem whenever there is a lien, because then later in the transaction, when we bring up, hey, we still need this information. We had this judgment in the beginning, or we had this trash lien, or, something that comes up on the settlement statement, and they're like, what is this big charge? And then it becomes a pointing fingers game. Well, I sent you an email 3 weeks ago that said that we had to order this demand, and now we got it in, and this is the amount. So I think those probably are best to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, this is what's going on. I just wanted to let you know that when I do get it in, it is gonna show this. So for me, I think judgments and liens cause the biggest issue and the biggest argument for an agent to automatically dislike an escrow officer.
That's a great point. I like that, because unfortunately, you guys as a third party, you guys have to be the most honest and transparent party in the transaction, and sometimes you guys have to make those phone calls and saying, this is not good, right? We found a judgment of child support, and then like the guy's like, well, that was many years, and it doesn't matter, it's still on. So Abby, how about in your years of experience, what would you say will be the number one thing that sticks around?
I had one that just closed last week that we were almost not going to close because I was worried about it. Because it was our seller had purchased the home subject to an existing deed of trust.
Oh, wow.
So we had the previous owner's information and everything, but couldn't get a payoff. I need to order it myself and have it sent to me. I got a payoff. Where did it come from? Turned out the previous borrower was in a BK, and so now we have an attorney. Like there was just, but it's all like we're there to help you, and so that goes back to the communication. Like we need to be talking with the seller and the agent and figuring out what do we need to do. So it kind of just got hairy. I mean, we wound up closing it, and we got at the last second how it always kind of comes together. But it was those kind of transactions where Yeah. And the seller in that one, he thought that I was trying to hold up, and if this deal doesn't close, and it's going to be you and your time. Our goal is to close transactions. Like, we do not want to do it.
Because we are delivering the information, we become the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. And again, having Steve over here, we talked about that and saying, you know what, because you guys are the ones that catch all the little details, you guys have to put out that information, and now all of a sudden you're not trying to you're trying to sabotage my transaction. And let's be honest, we don't get paid until the transaction get closed.
Right.
So you guys don't want to.
We want it closed just as much.
Right. And again, when we're looking at scenarios and we're looking at things that pop up in the middle of the transaction, is because the agents are not used to looking at, like you said, the prelim, right? One of the biggest things that I know that creates a lot of ripples in a transaction are HOAs. Can we talk about HOAs?
Yeah,
sure.
And I mean, let's be honest, let's be truthful, right? How easy it is to work with trying to order an HOA demand when the HOA is not set up to help out in the transaction. Nichole?
What do you mean?
Yeah, sometimes, you call the HOA and they're like, yeah, I'm going to get it to you. And then weeks go by, and then,
Well, we can find out how to get it and where to go to get it.
Okay.
It's just what I'm seeing lately is typically like the resale cert that comes with the resale package. You can typically, those figures are typically what's going to be reflected on your demand.
Right.
But you have to wait however long to get your demand. So, but then I'm noticing that on a demand, that's a file that just closed the other day, it rolled in, and there was another $610 charge on the demand that wasn't on the resale cert. So it's that's kind of now the problem I'm seeing is how reliable are the resale certs? It's almost like they're going to show you more on the demand on purpose, so you had to pay for that.
We can't close on a resale cert.
Right.
So when an agent gets the resale package and they see that resale cert that does have most of the information the demand has, that's where, too, they'll come and say, why can't you just use this?
Right.
And
we can't,
though. Right. We can't close on it. Our audit wouldn't pass on our file.
And the demand should come in reflecting this. It should match, but...
Yeah, so we always have to wait for the demand. The demand is required by law in Nevada to close on a escrow transaction.
Okay, and just again, so people understand what you guys are talking about, a demand means what?
So the demand is going to tell you what the current HOA's dues are, what the assessments are, if there's any violations, what the transfer fee is.
Any balance owed by the seller.
Yeah.
So again, you guys are literally collecting all the bills that have to do with that transaction to make sure that, first of all, they get paid. And second of all, the buyer, when they take over possession, there is nothing clear. There's nothing lingering out there, right?
Exactly.
Can you explain to the buyers and sellers, right now we're talking to the actual consumer, the buyer and seller, how important it is to act in a timely manner, especially for the seller when we need to go ahead and pay for the HOA demand? Because I know that it has got increasing price in the last couple of years. I mean, I remember it used to be only $125. I don't think it's $125 to order an HOA demand or a payoff or, cert or, the CCNRs and all of that stuff, the closing package that they call. What is the average that you guys are looking from, or is there a range of prices from, the HOAs that sit out there that the sellers don't remember that they have to pay?
Right. It's like $200, about $200 for the demand, and it's about the same for a resale package.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the demand and resale package, I mean, you're looking usually at, $500 to order that. That's something you have to pay up front. It is the only demand you have to pay for up front. Sewer, trash, taxes, we order, and those get paid through the transaction. But the HOA demand does need to be paid for to receive it. Okay.
So if I'm a seller and I'm looking at my closing costs of, whatever the agent told me, and then all of a sudden I get a call from escrow and say, hey,
can you pay this?
I need your credit card number because we need to order the HOA demand and it's a $500 bill. I'm sure that a lot of the sellers are like, wait, what?
Well, we send them a link,
and that's in the contract too.
Yeah.
It's in the CIC section, the demand. So but it's not. But
half the time they don't know what. Yeah, they don't know what we're talking about. So we do have to explain it, and then we send a link for them to enter their own credit card information and pay it.
Okay,
so we don't want your information.
So we don't. Yeah, and that's a great point, because we do not want credit card information for the same reason, because of the liabilities that, hey, I gave you my credit card and all of a sudden there's $1,000 on Amazon.
Well, shopping.
Right. So, it's very important for the agents and buyers and sellers and the listing agents to understand that you guys are here to make sure that everything gets done in timely manner, that all the money gets collected, everything gets paid off. And you brought something up, Nichole, not only HOA, but, the sewer, the trash. I know for a fact that Republic Service, which is our wonderful, recycling service company, they are so eager to file liens on properties. Yeah. Out of the escrows that you guys see on a monthly basis, how many do you guys see of a trash lien that are lingering out there for something that the seller probably didn't even know existed?
I don't really see. I mean, it's either they're not, but if there's a trash lien, there's probably like 19 trash liens. Like it's
they keep filing them.
Yeah.
More so the seller not knowing about it. That's more so when it was rental property. So if it's an investor, I know nowadays a lot because of that reason. A lot of investors have now included it in their rent and they're paying it because trash can't be transferred over to a renter. So as a renter, you're supposed to be paying the trash, and then the seller just assumes that you are because the bill is going to the property, and then they find out that they have all these liens because their renter never paid the trash. So it's always good for the owner of the property to include that. It's usually like $53 a quarter to include that in the rent, and they pay it themselves. That's really the only time I see that they didn't know there was a lien.
Okay.
Because they didn't realize it wasn't being paid.
Right. And Abby, you were talking about, sometimes there's like about 19 liens in the same property. Why does that happen?
Just because Republic Services
they keep refiling.
They'll just keep refiling.
Once they file one, they keep.
Yeah.
How often do they refile?
Oh my. I mean, who knows? Like they just
once a month. I don't know, every other month. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. They now charge for even we would get a demand. We request demands on all of them, and if it's paid through an HOA, then it just comes back and it's paid through HOA. Okay, there's your demand. Well, now even on when we know it's through an HOA, they charge $45 on every single escrow that we. So if it's or if it's a zero balance, if it's a single family residence,
still $45.
Yeah. If a $45 balance is a zero balance, because that's just their demand fee. So, but even on the ones that they don't even but just to tell us that it's paid through an HOA, they charge $45.
And so then we get to relay that information too. So that's where it sucks on our end is we have to order it. We have to have it in our file that we ordered it, even if it says zero, even if it says it was paid in the HOA. We can't take a verbal.
Right.
So we have to charge that $45.
We send them the payment, like they can't even reference it because they don't even have an account. They're just cashing the checks.
So then when they see $45 to Republic Service, and then they at their signing, and they say, well, that's through my HOA, and we say, unfortunately we had to order the demand, and they did charge $45 for that demand.
That's new. That's like since last year?
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting because again, right, there's this is a lot of things that the sellers don't understand that their costs, right? And let's be honest, the listing agent comes in and says, hey, you're going to sell your house at this price. This is what the commissions are going to be like. This is what we're going to pay.
Same thing with like a mortgage payoff. People, when we look at their figure and they're saying,
they'll pull up on their phone.
This is my principal balance. Yeah, like this isn't anywhere near.
I've done those signings where people are like, that's not what my payoff is like. I'm like, well, and then we have to pay. So, since we brought that up, can we explain why the difference of what your mortgage statement looks like?
Yeah, well, it's
and
simply because your interest is paid in arrears.
Okay.
So if we're in March, let's say that you made your March, so you're due for, or let's say that you haven't made your March payment. And so we're closing March 21st.
Okay.
So the payoff we have is good to March 23rd because we want a couple days of additional interest in there. Well, that payoff demand is going to reflect your principal balance plus interest from February 1st to March 23rd.
Okay.
Plus then any release fees, recording fees. So it's a huge chunk of money, but it's interest that is owed because of
the way that it's set up.
Exactly.
Right. And then when you guys are doing your signings and you guys are talking to the seller and the listing agent is there, and we get down to those type of questions, I know that a lot of the time the listing agent, they don't jump in because they're like, that's not my job.
Right.
How important is for you guys to be able to control that scenario, to be able to explain it very thoroughly to the seller for them to understand that it is that it is a cost? Because let's be honest, a lot of people, we don't want to overpay for things, but sometimes we don't know that there are things that we need to pay for, right? Like you said, your accrued interest we need to pay for. The one that I get all the time when I'm doing a signing is, why are you charging me for my quarter taxes if I already pay for them? And you're like, well, we just have to cover it just to make sure, especially now on the, when you have a buyer, you have to collect X amount of, months of taxes as well. Can you explain to me how that has to happen so they understand that we close the transaction?
So I think the way to show that so that they feel a little more comfortable is to always provide the demand to them.
Okay.
We're not just making up numbers. We're not just creating something in a calculator. So when you show it to them on paper, just like anybody else, I don't know, myself, if I see it, I don't have as many questions because, you know, it is from that company. It's on their letterhead, and then it shows me what each thing is for. It may still be irritating to them. Like, I can't believe I have to pay, you know, this fee, that fee, and this fee. But they see that it's due to that actual person. We're not just a third party that has some random fee collected. So to provide the demand to them is going to give them peace of mind.
Right. Abby?
The same thing. Same. And when we go back to the mortgage payoff thing too.
Please.
So that's the other thing is, like, if we're closing March 21st and you haven't made your March payment, that's something that I want to know. Are you going to make your March payment? Should I order an updated demand? Or is the late fee that's going to be assessed on the 16th, do I need to add that to my payoff figure? So it goes back again to communication.
Okay, since we're being real, then let's go ahead and do a real scenario. But Abby, my lender told me not to pay my March payment because we're going to be closing before. You know what I mean? But honestly, but I think it's very important for us to discuss that.
Yeah.
Because the lender might be telling you, don't make your mortgage payment, but
So that's extremely common. Extremely common. You hear that probably 1 out of 3 deals.
Yes.
The seller will say that. My answer to them is always, I never advise you not to make a payment. I advise you to make your payments while you're in escrow because you never know what can happen.
Correct.
So make them when they're due. If you choose not to make it, here's what is your late fee, and here's what will happen. If you want to know, you know, if it's going to be reported to your credit, please contact your lender and find out when they report or how that will work. But we always tell people to make their payment up until close of escrow because you're always going to be credited back. You're never going to pay for the time that you don't own the property.
Right.
So that we have
Even
prorations.
if we have to pay it because we couldn't, like, let's say you made your payment today, well, and it doesn't post, so I can't get an updated payoff.
Correct.
So I have to pay the amount that is reflected on this demand. You're going to get back whatever overage and interest and whatever, anything in your escrow balance. So it's all going to wind up going back to you. It just might be a little bit of time. Yeah. So but we do try to wrap it up if we can. If we know you just made it, we'll do everything we can to get things updated. So to make the numbers. Yeah.
Right. And you were saying something like, you know, if you never are going to tell a person, do not make a payment.
Correct.
Because we don't know what could happen, right? We don't know we don't know if the escrow is going to close or not.
Yeah.
Because we've had scenarios where everything looks fine.
Or the day before. It could cancel, it could delay. Right. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's always good to let people know, hey, you know what? Do not make your payment, because I get it from the lender side. And again, you know what I mean? You could comment if you want, but from the lender side, you know, they're trying to give you the illusion that you're saving money. Don't make your mortgage payment. Oh, by the time you close, your next payment is not going to be into 2 months. You saved 3 months. Like, no, you did not save 3 months. You paid everything up front, right? I mean, again, let's be honest. And, you know, again, if you guys want to complain, 702-416-4302, call me. But, you know, we just want to be transparent with the consumers for them to understand that, you know, if you don't make your payments in a timely manner, your credit could be affected. And that is something that nobody is going to be able to fix for you.
Yeah.
Right, Nichole?
Correct. Yeah. Especially if you have a mortgage late that gets reported, it is going to affect you too if you planned on refinancing. Maybe you thought, oh, okay, you know, I'm going to refinance in the next 6 to 8 months or something. But if you didn't make your payment and you were closing right on that borderline of when it gets reported, in the month that you were closing, you're going to cause yourself problems later down the road.
Abby, anything to add?
No.
No, I think and I think it's important. Again, you know, it's important information to put out there because this is something that we don't talk about. We usually have to discuss this at a closing where everything is, you know, like I got an hour, I have to go back to work, you know, and you don't have the time to really break down why this is happening. Right, Nichole?
Right, exactly. And that's the last thing you want. Right. In that hour that they're signing, and you're right, usually they are, you know, in the middle of maybe a lunch break or they have to be somewhere or they're going to their walkthrough or wherever the case may be. Usually that day is a little stressful, but you want that hour to be something special for them. You want to be, you know, you're making a big decision, you're signing on a house or you're signing away from a house if you're selling. You want it to be a happy moment for them. So when all these things come up on that day, it does get stressful for everybody involved. So you want to try to get through those prior to that day so that day is actually a positive day.
Right. You know, usually when I'm doing a signing, especially when we're doing the, you know, going through the settlement statement and we're going through the, you know, transfer tax, because that's another big one that people are like, you know, why am I paying the county to transfer the property from name to name if I'm paying you guys to do the paperwork? And like, it's a different fee. Usually when I tell my buyers, and I'm sitting there and saying, hey, this is the transfer tax that the seller is paying. But please remember, when you're a seller, you're going to have to repay this again, right? Why nobody explained to them? And I'm saying the buyer's agent or the listing agent, that transfer tax, it's something that needs to get paid, and it doesn't get paid to anybody but the county. Right. And how is that transfer tax calculated? It's
$5.10 per thousand.
Okay, so if I'm selling a $100,000 home, that's $510 that I'm gonna have to be paying for a transfer tax. Why is that transfer tax being paid?
It's a fee to the county for all the transfers, any transfers, unless you're exempt from transfer tax.
Okay, so that's where I wanted to get to, because a lot of the people is like, well, do I have an exemption? It's like, no, there's only certain people that could get an exempt. Can we talk about those exemptions? And usually it happens in a refinance or a sale, never in a purchase, right? Because the purchaser never pays the transfer tax, right, Nichole?
Yeah, a purchase is very rare to have an
the buyer
exemption.
can pay it, but yeah.
But
well, if there's consideration, because the exemptions are without consideration. So if there's consideration, then transfer tax is still due.
Okay.
If we're husband and wife and I'm buying the house from you, just because we're husband and wife, I'm buying the house from you for $500,000. That's consideration. So we're exempt as husband and wife, but not on this.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, so it'd be extremely rare for a sale to have an exemption that was involved. Usually it would just be like if there's a spousal deed involved and you're going from husband to wife or parent
a
to child.
refinance, you're coming out of your trust and going back in your trust.
Yeah.
That's a big one, the trust, because everybody like, well, why do I have to pay it again? Is because it's just what the rule of the state is, right? I mean, we don't make those rules. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah, it's up to the lender. So if you're in title in your trust and then the lender can loan to your trust, then we don't have to take you out. But hopefully the lender will have us do it all together, take you out and put you back in through the transaction so we can do both deeds so you're secure.
Right.
But in order to be exempt, you'd have to be the trustee of that trust. You can't have somebody else going on title with you.
Right.
That is a good point. Because again, sometimes we try to, pretend that we don't know the rules and we try to, make something that is not it. One of the biggest things that I see a lot is the disbursement, right? We're closing the deal. I'm the seller. I'm going to be getting, $85 because of my sale, right? And now we need to make sure that we have somewhere to send the money. How important it is for people to understand that we could not send that money to a third party.
Right. So we have to make our proceeds payable to the owner of record.
Okay.
So if you hold title in your trust, proceeds will be payable to your trust, to you, your trustee of the trust. So make sure that when you're providing us your bank account information, that does your bank account, is that set up for your trust? Can your account receive funds payable to your trust? Some will, if you're not, but it just depends. So a lot of times if it's not set up and we try to wire pay, then it will kick back and they can collect a fee. So we don't want to.
Or if you're selling the property and you own it sole and separate, but you and your wife has a joint bank account, again, it's up to the bank. So we have to send the wire payable to the owner of the property. But if we send it and, the banker receiving the wire says, well, this account is
a joint account
in two names and you're sending it to one, they may kick it back.
And that's really important because again, right, we're talking about people's monies. I've had scenarios where the owner of the house is like, you know what, I want to give this funds to my daughter. Can you send it to my daughter's account? And we're like,
you can.
Yeah.
and let's talk about why is that reason that we could not.
Well, and it's also because if the buyer's getting a loan, we have to follow the lender's instructions, and their instructions tell us that to notify them of any, typically it's like any disbursements over $5,000 being paid. So it's a risk on the lender side. So we can't just, we're not just, fine, like we'll give it to you and we can pay that and pay that, but we can't because this lender is telling us otherwise. So it's not just following your it's following all parties' instructions. We have to have mutual instructions from all ends.
Which we are a insurance company.
Right.
Thank you.
We issue
Thank you.
insurance
Right.
to lenders
Yes.
and owners.
So
So
it's a risk. Right. Exactly.
Right, and I think that's important again, to be able to have people understand really what escrow and title is all about. I mean, even though the other states, I mean, on the East Coast, it's an attorney state. So what you guys do will be,
Totally
be done
different.
to an attorney, right? And then you have the closing table where you have the buyer and the seller sitting in the same table, and then they just exchange paperwork and all of that stuff. But here is handled differently. You guys handle the escrow side. A title handles the title side. You guys put everything together. Now, the biggest things that we see right now with title is, same names, right? Liens and judgments, like you brought, Nichole. One of the things that we have not talked about, and it's very common as well, is child support, right? When you guys get that prelim and you guys go through it, because I know for a fact that you guys read them. I know for a fact that a lot of agents do not read them, right? How it's important for you to let the agents know involved and saying, hey, there's a child support. It may or may not be the party. And then all of a sudden just hell goes, hell breaks loose because they're like, that is not my party and everything. But you guys just can't remove it with whiteout and say, oh, okay, it's gone, right? There has to be a process, correct?
yeah, so that's where we need the personal information. So that's when we'll have to request a statement of information, which asks for, obviously, middle names, social security numbers, previous addresses, things that obviously people get uncomfortable giving out, right? As soon as somebody starts asking for all of that stuff, and if it's a buyer, they probably already provided it to their lender, so they're annoyed that another person is asking for it. And then on the seller side, they just want to sell the property and get their proceeds.
That's not me. That's just like.
But we just have to clear it. So we need all the info. We have to send it over, and then we have to get something back saying it's not them.
Right. So how do you guys have that? Where do you guys send that information? How do you guys get that cleared? Because I know the title is not going to just go and like, oh, yeah, I see all this information and it's clear.
Well, the child support's actually pretty easy to clear. They're one of the easier
Family
ones to
support
clear.
division. Yeah.
Yeah, because we fax over a form to them and they come right back. So usually a day, maybe 2 days later.
Okay.
And said not a match. And you can include, sometimes we'll get, pages and pages and pages of child support liens with all different, you can just reference all the different case numbers on there and they'll give it all to you back and tell you cleared.
So, but I know you said it's an easy process, maybe 1 or 2 days, but when you're in a crunch and
Or
you
if it's not
don't
just child support.
and you don't have 1 or 2 days to get a child support cleared,
Right.
Now we're getting into a scenario where we need to start asking for extensions.
Right. And so
Right.
goes back to the importance of the communication up front. And when we're asking for information, it's important that we're communicating and you're getting it back to us. Or if we do have questions, or then bring it up to us so we can talk about it, because we don't want to get to closing and have a bunch of things we've got to clear.
Which it's important for us
especially
to follow
if
up
it's a super common name.
Yeah, because if we just send an email in the beginning telling you that's what we need, and we wait all the way into the end and say, well, I sent you that email on whatever date it was, that's also not good on our end,
No.
because we needed it, so we should have followed up as well. So again, back to communication.
Right. And like I said, this is a report information because, again, these are things that we see every day that are happening that, could jeopardize a transaction, right? By us not following through, by the agents not understanding why we're asking for this information, by the parties, by the buyer and the seller saying, why do you want all this personal information, right? And it blows my mind because when you're in a real estate transaction and you're asking for personal information, there has to be a reason why it's being asked. But yet, when you get a text saying, hey, your tolls have not been paid, you're going to click on that link, right? I mean, it's like, they don't understand that the importance of the information that we are requiring is to make sure that, again, the buyer gets a clear title when they purchase the home, the seller sells, and there's no lingering out there. Because you mentioned something about also, Abby, you said child support is just the iceberg. Right. Then we have personal liens.
Oh, wait, so you get like some judgment that you can't get a hold of the attorney's office, and you're going rounds and rounds, and
right.
It's like
and people don't realize that you have credit card companies, Capital One, that file judgments as well. So if you have something in collections or you hadn't paid something, so they get surprised too if we call them and we say, hey, we have this Capital One we have to clear it. And if it is theirs, they know usually, what? That's on my house. Yeah, unfortunately, yes. So we've got to get a demand,
Okay.
So surprises like that.
Yeah. So I think it's very important that we just brought this up right now is how important it is for the consumers to understand if there's a judgment out there and it's for your name?
Normally you don't know, to be honest with you. Normally they didn't know.
Okay, that's fair. But if there's a judgment out there, it attaches to your property. It attaches to your car. It literally attaches to everything.
It follows you where you go, yeah.
Right. And people need to understand that is something that is, extremely important, especially when when they're running your credit. They'll have a list of the judgments that are reported against you, usually.
Right.
So you need to make sure that, your name is cleared, because you guys, and title actually does it. They run a name search at the beginning of the transaction, and right before we're going to record,
right,
they rerun it again.
Run it again, yeah.
And you've had conversations like, oh, well, you know what?
This popped up, yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that experience.
Normally those are like sewer or trash or taxes.
Okay.
It's rare, it does happen that... like an attorney judgment will pop up right before closing. Usually it's one of the utilities, and those are really easy to get for us.
Okay.
It's obviously possible for a mechanic's lien or a judgment from an attorney to pop up. So like if you were getting work done on the house because you were selling it, and maybe you thought, I'm going to pay them later, or I'm going to pay them after I close, and you didn't communicate with them, and they file a mechanic's lien, that could come up. So you want to make sure that, and that's something too that we ask. We have a form that we say, have you had any work or improvement done in the property in the last 90 days?
Is anybody owed? Yeah, because if there are, then we need the bills so we can pay them, so we can avoid. Yeah.
And again, it's important because, you don't want to have an outstanding bill once it closed, because then that creates another layer of issues to trying to get that collect, because the buyer's like, hey, I'm already the homeowner, why, you know what I mean?
Right, which we're liable for because we issued the title insurance, but then we're going to want to go after the seller. So yeah, it does cause a big mess.
Right. And again, we're just talking about being transparent, letting people know what's happening, what's really going on in during the transaction, right? Because we've had scenarios. I had a phone call from a real estate agent not so long ago where they're like, hey, and I think, Abby, I talked to you about this transaction. They're like, hey, we have a party that we're buying, and one of the borrowers passed away like the Friday before Monday they were supposed to close. Gosh. Right. And that, like you said, we don't know what's going to happen in the transaction it closes. Right. In that type of a scenario, what are the repercussions? What, does the transaction continue? Do we stop it? What have you guys had that type of scenario in the past before?
I haven't had that happen.
Okay.
But then we would fall to like, well, what was your loan? Was the dead person?
That would be on the lender. Yeah, the buyer would have to get requalified by themselves.
Right.
Or
or were they just on there as can they just come off, or do they? Yeah. Oh. So we don't know.
Okay. So it's not that big of a deal, but again, it happens.
Case by case scenario. Yeah. Yeah.
So have you guys had, last minute changes that all of a sudden the escrow chest didn't close and now we have to do extensions and everything like that? Tell me a story about that.
Not too long ago, I had where one of the borrowers lost their job the week before closing. So obviously that's going to affect your loan.
Right.
So they actually had to cancel because they were on the loan. And so the other person wasn't qualified without them. So,
or buyers that the day before closing, they go and buy a boat or a new car or something. Well, and then,
I always tell this story. I know of a transaction that the people went and right before they closed, they were going to be like doing their signing the following day. And they go to RC Willey and they spend $5,000 in furniture, and then the lender pulled their credit and they're like, oh, you don't qualify anymore. And I remember those $5,000 worth of furniture looked really pretty in their new apartment because they couldn't buy the house. Yeah. So these are things that happen, unfortunately, because people just don't know, or, they just don't care.
But then it leads back to communication, right? Your lender should have told you, your agent should have told you. It should have been disclosed to you not to go shopping. There's a whole...
Like same thing, like if we get docs and everyone's ready to close, it's finally like everything happened at the last second, and like, oh, my wife is in Oklahoma. She's leaving. Like everyone is always leaving the country, having a baby, moving, like doing all sorts of stuff. Like, let us know so we can coordinate when.
Okay, but I agree and disagree with what we're saying, because let's be honest, human people, right? Humans, we love to hear what we want to hear, and we don't pay attention to what we must here, right? And I've know that a lot of times you tell the agents, the agents tell them, hey, you know what, don't do nothing about this. And they're like, oh, for some reason, my car just pulled into the, dealership and all of a sudden I got a brand new car, Well, yeah, you're going to get a brand new car because they could care less that you're buying a home, and it does make a big scenario. So you guys are here to make sure that everybody gets done everything correctly. You guys, I always tell people, I said, escrow is like the referee of the game, right? Sometimes you guys have to make the calls. Sometimes you guys have to throw in the flag, and sometimes you guys got to expel people and say, hey, no, we can't do this, especially when we have big ticket scenarios. One of the things that I know that it doesn't happen common, but it happens is when they have tax liens, there's nothing you could do to get that away.
Well, that's what we run for our buyers is we run their names for federal liens. So if you have a U.S. tax lien, it will follow you, and it will need to be, and they will charge.
Which the lender should have caught it,
right?
But there are scenarios where it gets caught at escrow. Yeah.
Right. So you guys are here to, unfortunately, catch things that are not.
Well, and this goes back to like what you asked in the beginning, like what's the importance of having a connection and relationship? Is like you want to partner with a knowledgeable team, someone who can help when stuff hits the fan.
Yeah, no, that's great because again, right, you need to have that conversation where, and you have to have the comfortable conversation to call and be like, Nichole, I just got an email from my buyer telling me that, there's a potential tax lien on this, because that could deter the whole transaction because now all of a sudden, like you said, the lender should have caught that, but, things happen. But, we should be able to have that open conversation with our escrow officer.
Or maybe it's against the seller. And
but the conversation is always easier when you have a solution. So
right.
when you're calling them and saying, hey, this is the problem, but here's the solution.
Right.
It makes it that much easier.
What? We don't call them blame? Are you kidding me? Because that's what that's what the agents tell me. Your escrow officer is trying to sabotage my deal. I'm like, we are not trying to sabotage deals. We want to close deals. We're going to give you solutions. The solution might not be what you want to hear.
There's always a solution.
Right.
It's just, it may take longer.
Right.
It may require something that they don't want to do, but there's always a solution.
Right. So now let's get back to, extensions. How important is to have both parties understanding that there is an extension and escrow have to be. And I always bring this up because I had a transaction that, man, it just went to hell because of the agent wasn't specific enough on his counter or his addendum saying, hey, escrow must be on or before this date. He just put escrow must close on this date. And then we were ready to close earlier and nobody could do anything because we're like,
they can get an addendum.
Yeah. Or I'm even good. Like if everyone says okay, like I get that. When we like, it needs to say or before, as long as like I get everyone's.
But you have to get it agreed upon everybody.
Right.
But at that point, the listing agent is like, no, we don't have to because my my seller's still at home. I don't have to move out till this date.
Right.
And it became a big issue. And I was telling him, and the agent again. Oh, did you?
Yeah, you did.
Talk about that, please.
No, I had one that it wasn't that. It did say on or before, but they did want to close on that date, and we were ready the day before.
So it's kind of like a flip thing. Like we'd rather if you want to close.
So like
that
one
day,
side was like, I'm ready today. And the other side was like, no, closing's tomorrow.
Yes.
And then like they were ready at 8:01. They were like,
well, and
just to be.
And listen, and let's be honest, people.
But everybody has to agree. So.
Right. Because again, I've had scenarios where my seller's not ready to move. Well, it says he needs to move. Well, but the closing date is not till tomorrow. And like, are you telling me they're gonna pack and move? Yeah, they can. So, the reason why I brought out that point is because again, it has to be a mutual agreement by all parties. And all you guys do is, are you okay? Are you okay? Mr. Buyer, you okay? Mr. Seller, you're okay? Lender, you're okay? Okay, once everybody says we're good to go, that's the only way that you guys move forward.
Yep.
Correctly?
Yep.
You guys don't make decisions on the transaction, right?
Nope.
No, we follow mutual written instructions from the parties.
Right. And let's be honest, sometimes, like you said, sellers are being pain in the ass and they're like, no, I don't have to surrender till 11:59 p.m. because that's where the next day starts.
Right.
We've had those type of scenarios in the past, haven't we?
Yeah.
So it's important for the buyers to understand and the sellers to understand that it has to be a mutual agreement. All parties need to be in good faith because some people will act out just out of despite. Like, what, I'm getting a divorce. I'm not going to let you have my house till when I decide. Those are different emotions. But at the end of the day, title and escrow are here to protect the transaction.
Right.
You guys are here to build good relationship with the buyer's agent, the listing agents, to make sure that, when there are issues coming along, we could solve them together and not blame people.
Right.
We're not here to throw anybody under the bus. Right, we're not here to judge anybody because if they have child support, oh my God, it might not pay.
You have no idea what we've seen. It's nothing. You've got nothing on it. Yeah, it's nothing is too crazy.
Right. So again, they need to understand that that business partnership is what's going to make them successful at the end. Because what you want, and I know that you guys have very good clients that they 100% trust your ability to do your escrows and say, Nichole, here's an escrow, here's a buyer's agent. Talk to him, take care of him like you will take care of me. And that's what you guys do best. You guys take care of people, right? Transaction wise is one thing, but when it comes down to actually connecting with people, that's what you guys do best, right, Nichole?
Right. Yeah, true.
Well, and that's like our saying here at Lawyers Title, like personal experience matters. Mm-hmm. Like we want you to be able to talk, like we are here to help you and help you along the way or help clear whatever lien. Like we're here to help you.
Right.
So help us help you.
Yeah. There we go. And that's awesome because again, right, a lot of people don't know, really what the title, what the whole process of buying a home is until we're into it. And it could be scary, intimidating. I mean, you're buying $500,000 home, you're freaking out, your
that's
kids are
here. Yeah, that's
your kids are like, oh my God, we're going to have new friends. I mean, it's so much involved in it.
Yep.
And that's why Lawyers Title is so different than any other title company because we have people that actually care. Well, believe it or not, ladies, the time is gone.
What?
What did I tell you? Do I owe you lunch or do I owe you lunch? Right? I told you guys.
You don't.
I told you guys. So, again, Nichole, if you could go ahead and give me your name, last name, your contact info, location wise. And then, later on when we have you guys again, we'll talk about how you guys got into the industry. All right. So, Nichole, please.
My name is Nichole Seaman. I'm at the Southwest branch for Lawyers Title, and my email address is nicole.seaman@ltic.com.
Perfect. Now, Miss Abby.
And I'm Abby Rimmer, and my phone number is 702-680-6097. And my email is abby.rimmer@ltic.com.
Perfect. And my name is JC Castillo. You guys could go ahead and contact me outside of the air at 702-416-4302, 702-416-4302. Again, if you like the show, give it a like. If you don't like it, let us know why. We'll go ahead and switch. And remember, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, you guys have the right to choose your title company. So do not let your lender or your realtor choose for you. If you want to have great transactions and meet Nichole or Abby, you definitely could go ahead and request to do business with them. Remember, we'll be here in the next show. And like I always tell, please behave and take care of each other.